the mic.
Hey you guys, thank you so much for joining us here. This is Outlet JVS. My name is Samuel Leggett. This is Nadia Chambers. We're going to ask you a slew of questions about your epic new film, Angel Has Fallen.
Cool.
Honestly, and be quite honest, I think it's one of my favorites out of the trilogy. From a technical level, from a written level, and even from an emotional level, like I was really riveted most of the time.
Sorry to interrupt, guys. I just want to make sure the camera can you scoot a little bit closer?
Sure.
Okay.
Rick didn't want me that close.
Sorry.
No, thank you so much.
Okay, over there?
Yeah, it's good. We part of his shoulder, Mickey's shoulder's a little bit cut off, but I can turn it a little bit.
Yeah.
Here.
Here, I can move you a little bit more.
Or I can.
What do you think?
So we can scoot
Or like, yeah.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Sam.
Sorry, guys.
Nah, you're
Wait for my
fast.
partner to get back. You good?
All right.
Yes. All right. But yeah, I really actually took a lot of value out of this third installment. So the first question is for you, Rick. When it came to the legendary act of Nick Nolte and bringing him into the fold, which this is a more action-oriented, but as soon as he kind of brings up like his past about who he was and then the connection with Mike, I was immediately kind of sunk in that, wow, this is direct comparison, of course, to Mike and his progression through life right now. But one of the biggest things was I was curious, like the way that you kind of drew his character out very well, very eloquently. What was the planning stages of that? Because there was a line that I want to read back that the wife actually said, "Don't break his heart again. I need you to follow through." I thought that was really pivotal because at the moment that he first meets the wife and the daughter, it was such an emotional scene. It was really heavy. Like I was like, I think even that young actress, that she did a really good job of kind of convincing me this is real. As soon as he showed up and saved them, it kind of just like, man, hit home. Like this is where he's supposed to have been. But as far as the setup about that, I was just curious, what was it kind of building to?
Well, to start with, first of all, thank you for really digging the third installment. You know, Gerard, Butler, and I've known each other for years, and we've been wanting to work together and have talked about other projects. And then I got this call out of the blue of, hey, we're going to make a third Has Fallen. Would you be interested? But here's the angle that we want to go to. And what they wanted to do is to bring the action-packed ride and the spectacle from the first two movies, but then steer it in a new way where if you had seen the first two movies, you could finally meet Mike Banning and get a more in-depth character study on him. And if you were new to the franchise, it could be your entry point because it could be like an origin story. And then you could go back and watch the other movies and have fun with them. So the idea was that, you know, Olympus Has Fallen was the event of taking the White House. London Has Fallen was the event of assassination attempts on our world leaders in London. Angel Has Fallen is about the man, Mike Banning. He is the angel. And in it, because of the origin nature of the story, it was interesting for me to show a day in the life of a Secret Service agent. Very much like our first responder community, our law enforcement community, our military around the world, you get wired to a sense of honor and duty, and it becomes a drug. It becomes this adrenaline rush that you're used to, much like professional athletes. When you're used to being out there on that field or that court, you know, in the game, so to speak, you do everything you can to continue that. You know, it could be painkillers, it could be anything. You're doing any trick you can to keep going. And I found a lot of our special operations community and things that Mickey and I touched upon the same thing. But so the interesting thing about how that dovetailed into the Nick Nolte character is, one, I thought, we got to meet Dad. Let's meet Dad, and let's really show the juxtaposition from a lot of my research about post-traumatic stress. I did a documentary on a Delta Force operator who was blown up in battle, and about his version of PTSD, which he calls the lack of traumatic stress, which is that he is addicted to the chaos of war. He is not trying to run away from war. He wants to run back into war. And a lot of our military community have been fighting the longest combat game in American history. And you know, when you have somebody that was a 28-year veteran of the Secret Service, he is going to be wired to that rush, to that hypervigilance. And so what was interesting about the Nick Nolte character, coming from a very different type of a war, the Vietnam era, and to go through more what I call the classic version of PTSD, which is the shell shock of war and running away from war. It would be interesting to see him suddenly come back together with his son that he hasn't seen in many, many years, and think that he can help him, and realize that his son is the antithesis to him. His son is trying to run into war. He is addicted to it. So I thought it was an interesting way to one, not get too broad and deep into this, into the characters, and keep that big action-packed ride and that big summer action movie, but not make it mindless action, to way to have you rooting for these characters, embracing them, and so that you're in it with them in these rides. And one of the things I try to do with action, and it comes from my stunt background, is people always ask me like what it was like to do stunts, and I thought, but that's what action should be, is I shouldn't put you in the theater and you're watching action on the screen as a voyeur. I want you to participate in it. I want you to be inside the semi-chase. I want you to be in the drone attack. I want you to be there as a hospital is collapsing and what it'd be like to be inside of that thing. So we try to make you a first-person participant in the movie, in the spectacle, as well as in the characters and in their journey.
Well, as Pinkett. Yeah, the 18-wheeler scene, I literally was on the edge of my seat. I've never, and I love, chase and movies like that, but I've never felt the way I felt in that scene, because I literally, as much as you're rooting for him, you just know like this can't go right. It's just so crazy.
Don't get caught.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you're Mike Banning.
Mike, I have a question for you. First off, I want to say thank you for your service.
Miss Mickey.
Mickey, sorry. Your debut on the big screen, congratulations.
Thank you.
So yesterday, something in Q&A I thought was really interesting. You talked about authenticity of the role, and obviously we know you guys have a relationship. We know he consulted you a lot about it. But the one thing I want to know is how much influence in the Mike Banner character did you have, and if you did not personally have an influence on it, how much of yourself did you see in that character?
Well, luckily, I've never had to be put through a day that Mike Banning did to start with. But I think, and I really appreciate Rick doing this, and what we were able to do for the first time that I can recall with members of the Secret Service is actually humanize them, give them a father, give them a spouse, give them children, and show that they have to, they're not robots, right? They have to deal with the same things. They have to pay bills. They have to make deadlines. They have to try to make the plays at school of their children. Although, for 28 years, I got to tell you, I missed a lot of those. So I think we really were able to humanize the Secret Service characters in this. And I'm proud of that, and I thank Rick for doing that.
And that was my big key of bringing Mickey. And I'd known Mickey for a few years, and we'd been talking about different things, and we know a lot of the same people in the special operations community and law enforcement. And, the first thing I said to him is, I want you to come in on this movie with me. I don't want it to be a tell-all about the Secret Service. This is not trying to show everybody what their tactics are and how they protect. I want you to humanize them. I want it to be a day in the life. If you notice, I do have God in the movie and Nelson Mandela. I have Morgan Freeman, right? I mean, he's played everything there is, right? I have the man. And yet the first time you meet him, he walks right by the camera out of the Oval Office, and you stay with his Secret Service detail because that's how Mickey saw it. He was the guy walking behind the president, and so I wanted to walk down that hall the first time and show you in the day in the life, behind the scenes, of what it would like to be protecting one of the most powerful men in the world, powerful leaders in the world. And then you get to meet him in the press room. But it was that whole sense of just humanizing and showing what real people are and real stakes, so that you meet these people and then you endear for them. And then when the attacks like this, the drone attack happens, it's just not meat puppets, which I call them. They're actually real characters and real people that you're watching. The sacrifice of a man, like Murphy, that will push a president in the water because he knows they're using facial recognition to take himself out. I don't think there's any, one of the things that Mickey had said to me that really resonated when we first talked about it was, they were asking about body armor, and he's like, we're the body armor, like when the bullets fly, we're the ones putting our bodies to take the impact. Now that is the most selfless act I can possibly think of. And so we wanted to bring those aspects of the sacrifice of what the Secret Service would bring to the table, how much they honor it, despite politics. It's never about the politics. It's never about who's in office. This is our job to protect this office and to protect our government, and I wanted to have that portrayed.
Yeah. You can definitely tell the symbiotic relationship between the president and the whole entire detail in general. It's really well conveyed throughout most of the film, honestly.
And that's one of the things that I think that's interesting you pick up on, and I'm glad, is I've made other movies. I made a series of prison movies. Shot Caller and Felon, Snitch, and those movies. You realize that so many times correctional officers and inmates and prison gangsters have known each other for many, many years, and there's this relationship that happens. And I wanted to show that with Mickey, who has guarded, well, let's say more than one president. He's been on a number of different POTUSs, and you develop relations with them, and their detail. And I wanted that kind of personal connection that shows.
So I guess it's a good segue because this is kind of a combination of Mickey and Rick question. So just the setup for the drone attack in and of itself. Now the drones, I could tell, really good VFX. Like it was really staged very well, but just technically and practically, how long, how much was devoted to setting that up? Because honestly, the stunt work was amazing. Like the stunts looked real. Like the explosions looked real. The sound effects, sound design. The sound design, honestly, even like with the gunfire throughout the film, but specifically with the explosions, when I was in the theater, it was like this immersive film. Kind of like you were kind of like explaining, like you wanted us to go through this and feel it, as well as the emotion resonant for all the different actors that did a good job with it. But I was just curious, that planning stage, just for that scene alone, I was curious like how much went into that and practically and technically how plausible that really was.
Well, we did intensive research about drone warfare around the world right now. It's no secret, right? It's all of law enforcement and the military's tool that we use, and the enemy's using it as well. It has become a new technology that is working on both sides. The eerie thing that had happened while we were doing this is that the president of Venezuela literally had an assassination attempt on his life by drone warfare. And that was eerie because we're not trying to mirror reality. We're trying to make things feel real and grounded. We try to ride that fine line, but it is a spectacle. And so do we do ours on steroids? Yeah, massive steroids. But one of the things that is hard for law enforcement or military or anybody is they're supposed to be proactive and on offense, to do their job. But when a technology can be launched from miles away, outside your perimeter, it's very hard to be offensive. You become defensive very quickly. And so we wanted to show that aspect of how the new forms of technology are making it more complicated for protection work, our military as well.
So, I have a question about towards the end of this movie. I don't want to give too much away, but there's a scene at the end with Mike Banner, and I believe I heard this correctly, but there was really a big sense of respect, and it was kind of breathtaking to me because I did not expect this to happen, but towards the end of the movie, a particular character looked over to Mike and said, "I'm glad it was you." Mm-hmm. And I believe he quoted after that, "Lions forever."
Yeah, just
Lions. It's just the idea that, the idea without giving the movie away is that when you subject people to the longest combat campaign in American history, we've been at war for, we're going to be coming up on 20 years pretty quick here. 20 years people have been at war. If we can say an inmate can be institutionalized, well then why can't a soldier be addicted to war? And so when we turn these people into predators, because that's your job, and then you try to bring them home and be a domestic house cat, doesn't work too good, And so we wanted to show that once you turn people into lions to go out there and defend our country, it's very hard to shut that off. And it became a nod to that. There's a very different wave that we're dealing with the adrenaline rush. Do you think, a pro athlete, 60 years old, doesn't have that lion within them? Of course they do. And so we wanted to show that portrayal of that here's two adversaries, two people that were together and then become adversaries that respect that lion that's within them, and that respect that each other gives them.
I think it was a great close to the trilogy. If they don't do any more, I think this was a perfect ending, honestly, to the trilogy. I really appreciate both of you guys' work on it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. This was awesome.
And thanks for coming last night.
Yeah, no doubt. I really appreciate the Q&A. I think you.
By the way, great questions. There's a lot of little details you guys caught.
Yeah, thank you.
We had a lot of different ones. We want those little kernels, that people kind of come away with. So thank you.
Is anybody out waiting?
We have a phone or next.
Okay. Just one quick question about the title itself, Angel Has Fallen. Now, we know that the news channel said the guardian angel has fallen. We know that there's a strong amount of trust between the president and him. but why the word angel? Is there something more symbolic or deep about that?
Yeah, the original title was that they were going to do something on Air Force One, and we didn't want to again do another set piece movie.
Yeah.
And for me, I felt like Mike is the guardian angel, you know.
Yeah.
And so for us, it was much more of a metaphor of the protectors of an office that would sacrifice everything to themselves, and if one of them had fell. And of course, our hook of becoming America's Most Wanted.
Yeah.
I love that hook. I love the idea of making Mike Banning the fugitive,
Yeah.
putting him on defense the first time in the franchise,
Yeah.
and then suddenly unleashing him back on offense and having that ride with him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate you guys.
Yeah.
And so just to add.
Big gold bell,